Swami Kriyananda had an extremely good sense of humor, and he always enjoyed humorous repartee, and he was very witty, and Master was the same. He said in Master's company, Master was always bubbling over with joy. In Swami Kriyananda's autobiography, which is called The New Path, which is half the book is what it was like to live with Yogananda, and there aren't many accounts. So if you've read Autobiography of a Yogi but haven't read Kriyananda's book, you might find it very interesting. And he talked about how Master loved to tell jokes, and he said often with his thick Bengali accent and the fact that he found his own jokes so amusing he would start laughing before he'd finished it. He said sometimes you really weren't quite sure what the punchline was. But his enjoyment and his laughter was so infectious, Swamiji said you just found yourself swept up into it and just laughing without even knowing why you were laughing, because the joy that was coming out of Master, as I call him, was so impossible to resist. And Swamiji carried on that tradition. His whole personality and way of relating to us. Early on, I said to him, when you do something in a certain way, that's because Yogananda did it that way, isn't it? He said, of course. I said, and when you refrain from certain actions, that's because how Yogananda behaved. Swami said, of course. How else would I know who I'm supposed to be, meaning how to live according to the divine, except in the way that Yogananda inspired him to do? I being cut a little bit from the same cloth in terms of humor and witticism and enjoyment of that. I was with Swamiji, and we were standing on the balcony of a guest facility where we were staying. We were looking down at the swimming pool. The swimming pool was right next to the ocean, and there was a little bit of that sort of scum that builds up on a swimming pool sometimes. And Swamiji said, what's that on the pool, the stuff on the pool? I said, white caps, meaning, like it was the tide coming in this little tiny pool. And I just said that without even thinking. He asked a perfectly sane question. I gave him a silly answer, which at the moment was funnier than it should have been. But anyway, we laughed. And then I suddenly just wondered. I said, sir, what is humor? Like, why am I inclined to do that instead of just giving you a straight answer? And it was interesting what he said. And this is an aspect of joy, is laughter. He said, to a certain extent, the capacity to enjoy humor and to make humorous remarks is a spiritual quality for this reason, because it shows that you are flexible enough in your sense of reality that you can look at a situation and then just turn it into something else. A simple question about a swimming pool became the absurd possibility that there were tides and waves going in. But we just shifted. We weren't fixed in it. So part of what the aspect of joy is to not allow the apparent reality to become the only reality. Because the nature of the divine is Satchidananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new joy. And in all circumstances, joy is accessible to us if we either go deep enough into ourselves to find that, which is why we practice meditation, because in meditation we discover the underlying truth of ourselves outside of the external. And the other is to have a flexible enough perception of reality to just be able to realize this is just temporary. Everything just comes and goes, and it will all resolve in bliss. This is what we begin to understand both from experience and from the profound study of the teachings. In a very difficult situation, there was a period that lasted more than a decade when Ananda and Swami Kriyananda personally were persecuted profoundly through the legal system in the United States. At that time, there was another very strong group of disciples of Yogananda who felt that they had exclusive rights to his teaching. Swami Kriyananda felt as a direct disciple that he also had equal rights. So an effort was made through the law courts to use intellectual property, trademark, copyright, publicity rights to a deceased personality, so to sort of turn what was really a theological dispute into a legal dispute. And then it went into character assassination, accusing Swami of profound misconduct, everything that you would say against a leader. It was a horrible, tough time. There's two parts of it I want to tell. First, I'll tell the end point. After 12 years of this, which wasn't fun, the opposition lawyers were the kind of lawyers that give really, really, really bad names to the profession, really bad names. And so it was hard. It was very hard and very unfair, blah, blah. After it was over, I waited to become innocent and cheerful again. And I just began to realize, and a decade had gone by, so I was a decade older. I must have been around, I was probably around 50 at that point. And I came to what I now call the drop kick theory of spiritual life, which is totally the gospel according to Asha. Nobody says this except me. In soccer, which I've never played, you hold the ball like that and you drop it and then you give it a big kick, and then I've seen on television it sails for a long time, and sometimes it hits the ground and then sometimes it bounces and rolls a little bit, and I don't exactly know what the rules are. In American football, for some reason everybody huddles around and lets the ball do its thing and nobody touches it, so it moves for a while and then it finally stops. Okay? I feel when we're launched in each incarnation, Divine Mother or Heavenly Father, whoever prefers, gives you a drop kick of happy momentum. And depending on the power of that kick, it can go for a long time, it can bounce, it can roll for a while, but at a certain point it comes to a dead stop. And during the course of those 12 years of having to be in court and do all these, it was awful. It's like the momentum of my drop kick ran out. And when it was over, it was very interesting to me. I just waited for spontaneous joy to come back to me. And it was very interesting. I realized it didn't. It just didn't come back. I'd always been very lighthearted and cheerful, but I'd had seen the dark side of humanity and been through a lot of things I never hoped to go through. And I realized that Swamiji had given a series of seminars around the country, and it was called The Practice of Joy. And he said it was a very hard point to get across to people that joy is a deliberate practice. It's not something that just comes on us unbidden. It's a decision we make. I also realized I was about 50 at that point, and I could see, the momentum has finished. I don't have all the optimism, the innocence of lack of experience about what life is like. I can't just be happy because everybody's nice, because I know now that not everybody is nice, right? I didn't have the energy I still have lots of energy, but I didn't have the same energy I'd had. I have to make joy a conscious practice. I have to really decide. Otherwise, guess what? I'll just get old. I mean, what is it that happens? What is it that characterizes old people a lot? I mean, that's what it is. They've stopped practicing joy because the automatic momentum has run out. We don't have to be like that. Joy is a deliberate practice. It's looking at every situation, and this is where wisdom and energy come into this also, and asking myself, where is the joy in this? What can I find? What can I find deep? Now, going back to the actual litigation, we were in a certain point in the legal process, and we were in a trial, and all of us, the way the American legal system works, if you're going to be a witness later in a trial, you can be excluded from the courtroom so that you won't adjust your testimony to the testimony that you've already heard. This is the theory of it. So the other side basically put all of us on the potential witness list, even though they never called us. But that isolated Swami in the courtroom and left all of us in the hall. So there was this one particular day where this, and by this time, without boring you, there had been a great number of decisions that hobbled our ability to defend ourselves, which, surprise, surprise, resulted in a wrong verdict. But so Swami had to go through this questioning from this horrible attorney with his own ability to defend himself nobbled, and most of the people who were his supporters in the hall, not in the courtroom. So it was an awful morning, probably just awful. So there's about 20 of us out in the hall, and we're just stuck there. We can't do anything. After 2 or 3 hours, Swami finally comes out. Immediately, we just rushed around him. This is our spiritual father and our best friend. And, it's just always awful. Now, I have to back up a little bit. I'm sure the James Bond movies are popular in New Zealand, or at least known. The original James Bond movies back when I was a youngster, were more fun. Violence wasn't so graphic, morality wasn't so disintegrated, so they were just fun. They were just a lighthearted romp. And Swamiji enjoyed them, and we often went to see them. And one of the many characteristics of the suave James Bond was he had a very particular way of having his martini created for him. And he wanted it to be stirred, not shaken, like that, okay? So this was a phrase that we all knew from the James Bond movies. So Swami walks out, and he looks a little pale. It had been pretty much of an ordeal. And he's standing there, we're all around him, and someone, just says, "Sir, how do you feel?" And he goes like this, "Stirred, but not shaken," like that. It was perhaps the darkest moment of our lives together. And in that moment, he just said that. We burst out laughing, much to the great dismay of the opposition attorney who was really hoping. We just burst out laughing. When we finally stopped laughing, he said, "Well, where shall we go for lunch?" Joy is a deliberate practice. There was everything about that situation was to be depressed. But why should we be depressed? If it's not the happy ending, it's not over yet. Death may come, imprisonment, everything could come. Loss of reputation, loss of money, all those things can happen. But everything ultimately resolves in bliss, because it's our own nature to be blissful. This is what every master says. And we can always find that. Sometimes we find it more in the worst moments, because all we have left is our own consciousness. But we won't find it if we don't practice, because practice makes permanent. So we have to really look at ourselves. Master even said, if you're feeling sad, he said, stand in front of the mirror and push the corners of your mouth up, right? Like that. He said, it's that important. It's just so silly, isn't it? Push the corners of your mouth up. But he's just trying to get us to see. And I will remind you, as I have said elsewhere, there's this poem that Master wrote. It's called Samadhi. Samadhi means the realization of God, the final freedom. It's a very long poem. It's very dramatic. Vanished the veils of light and shade, lifted every vapor of sorrow. And then it talks about anger, greed, good, bad, salvation, lust. I swallowed and transmuted all into a vast ocean of blood of my own one being. It's pretty dramatic, like that. And it goes on and on for many, many lines. Master told us actually to memorize it and then repeat it when we're meditating, because it has tremendous power, and goes through all of this rise and fall and living and dying and all these different things. And finally comes to the end, the last lines. A tiny bubble of laughter. I have become the sea of mirth itself. Amazing. All of this adventure All of this adventure, the end of it is that we have increased our awareness, and we realize that this is just waves on the ocean, and what we thought was really ourselves, and what we thought was really the end, and what we thought was really, this time I'm crushed and I will never rise again. It's never true. Because always underneath it, Satchidananda, that's all that there is. And that doesn't mean it's always easy or pleasurable. And so you have to understand that joy is not lilting happiness. Swami made some good jokes at really opportune times that were really helpful. But real joy is something quite different. Real joy is just understanding that if it hasn't resolved into bliss, it's not yet over. And when you can hold that, and just what you're holding then and what you're giving to others, and sometimes you just bring to the situation a really good joke at the opportune moment. Like Swami just, at the opportune moment, he just saw it from a different perspective. He was stirred, but he wasn't shaken. He was still Master's disciple, and he wasn't afraid. Okay, sometimes you can just do that, but sometimes the joy has to be under the surface. People around you are weeping. Great tragedy is happening around you, but that joy translates into a kind of, it's a vibration that all is not lost. That under here, joy is a form of faith, you see. Because if you can still feel the possibility of joy, that means we haven't lost hope, have we? And we haven't lost faith that the divine is still present and will come through. A deliberate practice, a decision we make. That's the power of joy.
Another line from Yogananda's poem Samadhi is, "From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again." From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From The secret of laughter lies in the laughing, not in the search for joy. It's a swallow winging on the wind, it's innocence in a boy. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy in the singing, not in the song sung, welcome but never crave. If you think that laughter lies in things, to things you'll be but a slave. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy in the singing, not in the song sung. Whoops. Joy in the giving, not in the gaining. Grasp and you'll never sing. You could win the world and still be poor. Win peace and live like a king. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Sing when the sun shines, sing when the rain falls, sing when your road seems strange. In a tempest seize the lightning flash and ride the winds of change. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Yes, clap. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly.